Hi, and welcome to Litera TV. I'm Caroline Hill, editor of Legal IT Insider, and I'm here with Stephanie Hamon, head of legal consulting, legal operations consulting at Norton Rose Fulbright. Hi, Stephanie.
That's a mouthful. Hi,
Is
Caroline.
it mouthful? Do you know what? The amount of times I murder people's titles, and I'm trying not to look.
Don't worry.
How are you?
I'm very well. How about you?
Yeah, good, thank you. It's lovely to chat to you. So congratulations. So there's lots of reasons why we're chatting, really. But so you've been nominated for the European Women of Legal Tech, which is very exciting. So congratulations.
Yes, indeed. Thanks. And it's quite an amazing list. And I think that's such a great initiative. I'm always a little bit dubious sometimes about women-specific stuff, but
Yeah.
I think we need a bit of recognition, and that is such an awesome group that has been nominated as well. So, you know, we're all winners as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, well, so yeah, we won't go down that route, but so I had a great chat with Isabel Parker from Freshfields about exactly that, about whether we need women's awards, and we concluded that it's a really valuable thing, not least just to see the whole list of women up there doing amazing things and sort of helping to create that community. So I think it's a really good thing. So we're going to talk about three things. So we're going to sort of look at some of the work that you've been doing. So you've been recognised for your contributions to legal technology. And so one of the things we're going to sort of do a bit of a recap of some of the quite brilliant stuff that you did at Barclays in terms of introducing KPIs, etc. I'm going to need to manage my time here. But so, and then we're going to talk about your current role at Norton Rose, where you're building a new team, really, working under the NRF Transform banner, the umbrella. And then we're going to look at the Bionic Lawyer, because you're working with Rob Booth from the Crown Estate and Stephen Allen, who's now at Elevate, on the Bionic Lawyer project, which I think,
Indeed.
I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, but it's definitely worth, there's a bit of a call to arms at the end. So listen out for that, because we want to get as many people involved with that. So where to start? So Barclays. So that was obviously that's where I think I first got to know you. Was that your first? That was your first major legal? Oh no, of course, because I'm talking nonsense, of course, because you came in from private practice to Barclays.
Yes.
Of course you did. Yes.
That was my first client side.
Your first corporate. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's where we really started getting to know each other. So tell me, so you, I think one of the you created, so it was around the panel, wasn't it? So it's around, so before you got involved at Barclays, they had I think it's about but looking back to reflecting back to 2012, they had around 1,000 law firms on the panel, which got reduced massively to 140. And then you were involved in working out how to create metrics. So you created you called it the capability framework, is that right? That was the initial thing that you were involved with. So just explain a little bit. So you created expectations of law firms, which were sort of initially under 4 categories, and then that grew, didn't it? So you had legal advice, collaboration, value for money, thought leadership, and then it then expanded to innovation and technology. Is that right?
Innovation and technology and diversity and inclusion.
So do you want to,
Yeah, so I think the challenge is when everybody or anybody who's involved with what we call nowadays change management program, you know that you need to have hard facts and data to help get people on board. And you know, there were really good reasons why Barclays panel grew to the number it grew, and we kind of had to unpick a lot of it. You know, part of it was due to internal processes which were cumbersome, so to avoid having to go through this, just felt like, you know, add everybody on there, and then, you know, that at least we don't have to deal with that problem later on. But really, what we were trying to do, it wasn't about a reduction in number of panel firm. It was, how do we reinvent that relationship? It was broken. You know, panel existed for really good reasons, but they somehow lost their mojo along the way. And what you ended up having was 2 sides that really were not working well together, not collaborating. It was more as if one was always trying to win one over the other. And we need to change that, but we also needed to ecosystem.
Yeah,
you're not hearing me.
You just froze for a second. Sorry. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so the idea was to make sure that the Barclays legal team would be looking at the ecosystem in light of all of the changes happening. And it's hard because everybody has got a perception about specific law firm or law companies through experience, through personal connection. So we needed to make it more objective and less subjective. But a lot of what we do in legal is qualitative rather than quantitative. So we had to start somewhere, and we took that step back and said, well, what are the guiding principles? We keep saying, and many others are saying, we want our law firm to be an extension of the in-house function. Okay, great. So what? How do you measure it? How do you define it? And that's when we said, well, if that's the case, we probably should assess them the same way we're assessing our in-house team. And they have capability framework to know whether they're performing well and they're being assessed against. Well, we need to develop similar for the law firm. And we need to share this in a very transparent way, because I inherited a situation where feedback probably wasn't given enough, and not in a structured manner, and often by people who also had a relationship. And it's really hard to tell somebody that you respect that they're not always doing things right. But if you are being really clear about your expectation when you start with, it's easier to deliver the message. So we started with this 4 dimension, but then very quickly, innovation and technology and diversity and inclusion became 2 very important pillars. The main driver here is to say, if a client with a big buying power is telling its legal provider that those 2 really matter, it will encourage law firms to take it a bit more seriously and really make investment in it. So we developed the 6 kind of framework, but that's very, again, subjective. So we had to take it one step further to make it more quantifiable. So we developed a balanced scorecard on the back of it, and we scored firms, partly based on feedback from the in-house lawyer, but also through, for instance, how they were pitching and how they were delivering matters. So we ended up with a number of real data points that we could represent and visualize, and really help through that visualization the legal department understand what good look like. Because when you've only ever worked with 1 or 2 law firms and you're used to that service, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So one of the objectives was to show them what more they could be getting from different law firms that weren't just looking at delivering legal advice, but that service delivery element of it as well. So the content, but the delivery were equally important in that equation.
How were you grading them? How did you actually do it practically? I mean, I remember we talked at the time, but so it was sort of getting the lawyers involved, and also it was a bit of underlying technology as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, well, to be honest, it all started as it should, which is we first had to work out the process.
Yeah.
And then get the people involved. And initially, it was not quite pen and paper, but it was Excel spreadsheet until we then got technology. But really, the process was to say what matters. And again, because the whole point was about changing behavior and perception from our in-house lawyer, we had to have them involved in the process. It couldn't be something that my team would do centrally, because it would have been completely disconnected from reality. So the lawyers were involved in filling in surveys based on this balanced scorecard, and that was shared on a regular basis with the law firm. So we kind of got that process sorted, getting the criteria agreed, but the weighting as well. You know, out of the 6 dimensions, what was more important, and kind of also benchmarking, because initially when we did it, there were 5 score points for each of the elements. So exceed expectation, over exceeds, meets, doesn't exceed, or really bad, really doing badly. And it was interesting because the first time we got the feedback, all of our law firms were over exceeding expectation. So we were living in, naughty land. Everything was perfect. So we had to go back to the in-house lawyer and say, well, that doesn't quite reconcile with the anecdotal feedback you've given us. And we had to do that element of calibration so people could understand what good really was like. So we had the process, then we got the people to use the process. And initially, we in-house team don't necessarily have a lot of money and budget. So we wanted to test it first, make sure it was working. So it really was Excel to start with, and a bit of visualization. And then we got a little bit more sophisticated. So, things that are really
Remind
powerful.
us what you used.
Power BI.
It was Power BI, was it? Yeah.
Brilliant. So easy, and it's part of the package that everybody has almost nowadays. I think if we had to do it differently, there's a number now of legal tech providers who especially do kind of legal spend management, but have that kind of additional feature around panel management and so on and so forth. So we probably would do it differently if I was to start again today.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
there's a lot of good
remember
visualization.
talking to you about your quadrant. So we were lucky enough, obviously, to have you at Gleneagles and in terms of a legal IT insider. And I remember you talking about your quadrant, your Gartner style quadrant, where it became a kind of it developed as over time, didn't it? So you had your KPIs, and then if law firms were in the top right quadrant, then you would be more likely to instruct them. Bottom left, and then there was that. Goes back to what you were saying about that feedback, that very upfront feedback about where do you think you are and you're here, and how many I mean, I know you're now on the other side of the fence, but so how many corporates do you think are doing that kind of level of assessment now? Is it still quite, because at the time that you were doing it, it was quite unusual, but obviously we've seen the growth of legal ops directors, etc. And so do you think it's something that more in-house teams are doing now?
I think, it's all part of that journey where legal function are really now positioning themselves as a strategic business partner. And having this set of KPIs is one way to have that interaction with your key stakeholder using a language and a format that they understand. And it's not just subjective and anecdotal. So a lot of the work I'm doing now actually with my clients are about helping them develop this KPI and dashboard.
Well, so this is what I wanted to come on to. So your new role, which is very exciting. Well, it's not so new anymore, but so you are working under, just tell us, for anybody who's not familiar with NRF Transform, just tell us briefly about that, because obviously that's your sort of, as you called it, umbrella.
So it's been a year. So after having a blast of a time at Barclays, I really like the kind of finding solutions type thing, and I thought that I wanted to try and tackle more problems in the industry, or at least help people not reinvent the wheel all the time when you have tried and tested methods out there. I was lucky as a client to sit across all of the big law firms and understand their strategy and where they wanted to go. And NRF impressed me in particular because of Transform. So you can think of Transform as almost like a startup within what would be your traditional big law firm. And it is our service delivery and innovation vehicle internally, both for our own purpose, and that's how it started. Really, how can we deliver service in a way that would be more efficient, far more user-friendly, and then it's now morphed into that kind of external facing element as well, of which I'm part of, where we're developing legal products in the pure traditional sense of it, so really technology-based products, and the legal operations consulting. And the idea here, sorry, go on.
No, you go.
And the idea is to say the role of in-house is very much like two sides of the same coin. They manage legal risk, but they also need to be that business operator. And law firms traditionally have helped their clients managing legal risk, but in-house and GCs don't have anybody to turn to help them being a business partner or being a business operator. And most of them haven't received any training in that area either. So the whole point of what I'm doing is to provide a holistic service to our clients to help them be equally good on both sides.
Yeah, no, it's great. So it was launched on 9th of July, and it was with very much hand in hand with you, wasn't it? So Norton Rose launched this new legal operations consulting business with you in partnership. And so there's a few limits to it, aren't there? So you're doing strategic legal consulting, legal operations advisory, and legal operations delivery. Forgive the question. Is there a massive difference between the three of those? Are they quite strongly overlapping? As I was reading through,
they are, in a sense, they're all interlinked, but it kind of then depends in terms of the type of service we're providing. And for anybody who's interested, I've developed a model which is in the shape of a pyramid, and we could probably share as well. But that actually explain the entire remit of legal operations. And it's based on Maslow hierarchy of needs. So that's where the kind of strategic elements come into play. And here, the kind of advice we're providing clients is more akin to what a management consultant would do. So for instance, my first mandate was with a regional GC of a large financial institution who just taken up her role. The company was massively shifting their priorities in the region. She needed help with resetting the vision for the legal function. So here what we're doing is engaging with the business stakeholder, understanding what the needs are from the legal function, and helping her shaping her strategy and vision for the medium and long term. But then on the back of that, so I'm just using that as an example to show how it flows down, but like a lot of in-house function, they've got challenges on headcount and budgets, but yet there's always more to deliver. So we made recommendation about some efficiency that they could be bringing in, one of them being around contract automation, because they're doing a huge volume of contract review. So now we're helping the same client with automating a number of the contract. So here you're more into the delivery. So that's the strategy and the delivery.
So you're very much sort of effectively outsource legal operations potentially. If they can't get headcount, then they could potentially. So are you going to grow? Is the ambition? I mean, obviously, COVID, I'm sure, has put a very weird spin on everything. But is the ambition to grow as much as the demand is there from the clients?
Yes, definitely. And it's an outsource in the sense of, and that's what's been really interesting is I'm working with all size of organization. Some have like 20 headcount or even that, and others have got 300 headcounts. And you then work with them in a different way. So the smaller teams don't have a dedicated legal ops person. So I tend to be the outsourced legal ops function. With the bigger function, it's more almost augmenting skill sets and resources because they've got specific projects. And yes, definitely the ambition is to grow. It's a new practice for NRF, and the idea
what size
is very
are you
much.
Now? How many of you are there? Is it just obviously you've got the transform lot, but just in terms of the legal ops consulting bit?
So actually, you really need to look at it as NRF transform because depending on the mandate, I will call in on this element. So typically for that automation element, I'm leaning on our partnership with NRF Psych, but we also have and we also have what we call business solution team full of people that are legal engineers. We also have legal design, we've got pricing, we've got resource management, and there's 150 of us in transform. And I can basically use the right skill set to deliver the right elements. So it really is.
So you are working with psych. So obviously a lot of what you do is process. So helping them with the processes in terms of rather than just the tech. But so it was May last year that NRF, for anyone listening who isn't aware, so Psych Engineering formed a partnership with Norton Rose. And obviously they can come in. I guess it very much fits with what you're doing. So they can come in and create some potentially bespoke solutions for the in-house team. Exactly.
And that's typically an example I was giving you. Through the strategic mandate, we identified an opportunity for the function to run more efficiently. And then what you have with NRF Psych is a powerful combination of legal advice. So of course our lawyers can help streamlining the clauses, reviewing the negotiating position, so on and so forth. I can help in with the process element and side of things and making sure that comes at the right point in time, that the right people will be involved, and that goes through the right kind of steps. And Psych can come in and really do the automation work. So it's a all-in-one stop shop, really. Yeah.
And are you, before we move on to the Bionic Lawyer, so are you trying to recreate effectively what you did at Barclays? Are you trying to help other in-house teams sort of introduce those KPIs, which I know obviously it's quite interesting because now you're on the other side of the fence. Obviously it's quite unpopular with law firms, isn't it? But are you trying to help them create, the similar sort of setup?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily, well, it is definitely unpopular with some law firms, the one that are probably more on the traditional end of the spectrum, but it is actually in everyone's interest and benefit, because what happens otherwise is in-house function are reduced to using two levers and two KPIs, which is headcount and external spend. And the only two things that happen usually is reduce headcount and get discount from your law firm. And that's quite a simplistic view, but that's how the market has worked for a long time. And the idea is to say you can still achieve savings, but there are far more levers that you can pull, and I can help you do that. That's exactly the conversation I was having with a client yesterday. They've got a target that they need to hit. And if they don't proactively come up with their own suggestion, they've already been told FTE and external spend are going to have to be cut. And it's quite a blunt instrument if you use those two only. So that's what I'm kind of helping clients do at the moment.
It's just mad, isn't it? So I don't know why there's not more, I know at Barclays you were working towards fixed fees and much more, like in terms of the way that you actually charge for stuff, which to me, that the retainer type setup is something that we should be working towards, because it rewards efficiency, doesn't it? But sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's really hard, and I've had to have some of this conversation with the finance department when I was a client. How can you look at your finance director and say, no, I'm getting a good deal from my law firm, but yet they're being paid by the hour. So the more time they spend, the more they're going to get paid. So, but they're all really good people, so of course they're not going to do it. The finance director doesn't really relate.
And the work you do is all fixed fee, isn't it? Within Transform, within your bit, I should have mentioned that. So it's all fixed fee.
It's output based. So it's basically you're paying for a piece of tangible work you're getting.
Yeah.
And usually it's about building the business case around it. So in the context, say, of a contract automation, it's very easy because you look at number of contracts, time you're going to save, and you build that in relation to the value the client is going to get out of it.
Yeah. It's funny, value-based billing is still a challenge for the legal sector. So let's move. So I think that otherwise I'm going to run out of time. I'd love to carry on chatting about what you're doing. But so the Bionic Lawyer project. So let's move on because we've only got a few more minutes. So it was launched by Rob Booth, who's the General Counsel at the Crown Estate, and Stephen Allen, who at the time was at Hogan Lovells, but he's now at Elevate. And then you're now working with them on it.
Yes, well, it was this kind of the three of us, and it all started as appropriate around a lunch with a glass of wine.
Okay.
Of course, being French, there had to be wine.
The best plans always do.
And it's, it just started with a shared, I guess, frustration, which is we could see everyone trying to solve the same problem, but individually and very siloed, and everybody reinventing the wheel. And a lot of those challenges in the industry having nothing to do with providing your outfit, whether you're in-house or law firm or law company, with a competitive advantage. And it's just, seems insane the amount of time, work, money wasted trying to solve all of that in isolation. And the fact that when there is proper collaboration, you really unlock potential and you really create value.
Yeah. And
we thought there must be a way of unlocking that value. So it all started a little bit like that around, what would be the toolkit we could give the industry? And again, by the industry, actually, I like the word ecosystem because ecosystem implies that one can't really survive without the other. And I think there's been too much of that kind of, in-house versus law firm versus alternative provider, which we should now call law companies, and then legal tech in the mix. But actually, if everybody managed to really work well together, everybody would be a winner. Call me naive, maybe, but that's very much the idea. So we managed to create a bit of a community.
Okay.
Diverse one around it. And when I said diverse, is indeed we've got representative law companies, but academics. I see my connection's not great. Have you lost that?
Do you know what? I'm trying to style it out and just like completely act as if it's all, but we lost you for a second there, but carry on.
So I said, it's a diverse community with not just representative from everyone, from everywhere, but also academics. And, we've got a neuroscientist in there and she's brilliant in terms of
But what are you actually, so I'm going to confess, right? So I've spoken to Stephen Allen about this and I've spoken to Rob Booth about this, but in kind of in passing rather than sat down to talk about the Bionic Lawyer, right? And I saw Rob has there was a letter posted recently that's been shared on LinkedIn. I'm still the Bionic Lawyer. So I'm still not 100% clear on what it is that you're trying to achieve, right? So there's this concept. I think that maybe it's useful to talk about the underlying concept of the silver and gold box. Yeah. So is that so that central to. So this is what you're saying about value, right? So it's people understanding what work is, what it's all about value, right? Is that fair to say? So
Yes.
it's all about recognizing your value and understanding that not all advice is equal, and that it should be treated accordingly. And the silver. So do you want to say about what the silver and gold box is?
Yes. So I think it's just that not all problems are equally difficult or equally unique. So that's kind of the difference between silver and gold.
Yeah.
Silver are the ones that lend themselves to more efficiency. So it's about designing solution that would work for everyone, and rather than every time reinventing the wheel. So I don't know, things like, say, legal opinions that, every time you seem to reinvent the wheel. Or if I take a completely separate example, but I'm buying a flat at the moment, and it looks like it's the first time my notary is going through any of that. It's almost like they've never had any of that before, and they don't know the paperwork and they don't know the timeline.
Right,
well, often this is the feeling that all parties have when they work on a transaction. Like, seriously, how many times have you done that before? We should not be having this problem. We shouldn't be asking ourselves this question. So let's one and for all agree on what's the best way to solve that type of problem. And I don't know, there might be an M&A transaction, or, something in a way that is recurring regularly, which actually M&A transaction might not be the good example. But then the gold box are the one where, as we all know, the problem in industry are becoming increasingly complex, and they require multidisciplinary team to solve, and they're harder, but they are the more interesting one to work on, right?
Yeah.
So the whole idea is to say, let's try and create ways to solve the silver box problem, so that we all have more time to spend on the gold box thing.
Are you trying to create standardization? Is that one of the objectives?
So one of the objectives really is to equip all of the participant in the ecosystem, so in-house and law firm, but also new joiners like grads and stuff, with a toolkit of things that they should be looking at in terms of how can they unlock the potential for those organizations within the industry. So it will also go to, what kind of tools should you have and be available. It goes to what kind of skill sets and what kind of culture. But if you wanted to make sure you maximize the value of the individual you have, here are 16 tools. And depending on where you're at and your maturity, you pick that tool and you use it, and you'll see an incremental value.
And that will be within the Bionic Lawyer. That you'll go to the Bionic Lawyer for that. So it'll be your kind of way of, finding your toolkit within the Bionic Lawyer, within the Bionic Lawyer environment.
And that's where the 16 levers are. And this will all be open coded and available out there. And people, it's kind of trying to guide people through a collective thinking of over 350 people now as to what good looks like and what are the best practices. And if you use that, you'll see benefits, not just for you, but for everyone else in that ecosystem.
Yes, because there's a talk about, I don't know if we've run out of time, unfortunately, but so Rob published a letter where he was talking about
well, actually, the Bionic Lawyer did
the
publish
Bionic,
it. It just so happens to be Rob.
Sorry, the Bionic Lawyer published it. So what's the Bionic Lawyer website? Because I couldn't say, is it just bioniclawyer.com?
Yeah,
I'll post that. I'll share that afterwards. But to be
honest, where we're the most active is LinkedIn, and there's a workspace here, so anybody interested can just.
I was thinking that's really what I was thinking of, directing people, because in this letter, the Bionic Lawyer, it's kind of a call to action, really, isn't it? It's a call for people to get involved, because you want to encourage as many people to be involved, because obviously one of the ways that you can actually really drive things forward is by having enough people involved, to sort of drive forward. So he talked about where is it? Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. So customer, I like some of the language. Your customers are your surest route to enlightenment. Work out what they want and establish what they need. Have a chat with a neuroscientist to find out how recognition unlocks one of the most productive brain states. There's some quite sort of like very thoughtful, almost philosophical stuff in there.
Yeah, so I think it's just striking that balance, and hopefully, and because initially we're only showing the high level, it might sound quite theoretical, but there's a practical application to it. And the call for arms is both for new contributors to help refine the toolkit, but also for people to start using them and telling us how it's working, so we can keep refining and improving.
Well, you've done it. That's brilliant. Everyone go and have a look. Stephanie, thank you so much. So great to talk to you. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Bye.
Caroline.
Thanks. Bye.